Hi there, this is Josh from Literary Gladiators, and today we are going into the vault, and I will be talking to you about the best books that I read in 2010. 2010 was a great reading year. There were 5 books on my list that received 5 stars out of 5, and it was really a year that I came across a lot of books that became favorites of all time. 2010 was the year that I graduated high school. It was also the year I started college. I was 18 years old for the most part. And thus, I read a wide array of things. So, let's get right into the list. I have 8 of the books with me. 2 of them I read from other sources and just never happened to acquire them for myself. I probably should, though. And one of which is number 10 on the list, and that is Animal Farm by George Orwell. I read this in high school as part of the standard reading for that particular English class. And I think that the story about using farm animals to illustrate the Russian Revolution has demonstrated a complete familiarity, where the pigs represent the leaders and the different animals represent different factions of society. I think that George Orwell is very clever when it comes to his use of taking the simple idea to bring attention to his philosophy of the idea that people that aspire to become leaders take on the feelings of the general population against the current leadership. But once they assume the leadership, they morph into the general mindset of the previous leadership, because the need to strengthen and assume control is a far more addictive and important thing to them. George Orwell is more straightforward with this idea in his last book that he wrote, 1984, which is also something that I read. People are familiar with Animal Farm in 1984, but I've also read Keep the Aspidistra Flying and The Road to Wigan Pier. I would like to read more of what he's written because he's really an intriguing writer that really has done a fine job with his straightforward approaches to whatever it is that he wrote. Number 9 on my list is The Poet by Michael Connelly. This is my introduction to Michael Connelly. It is an earlier standalone of his. And out of the books that I took to Disney World with me when I went down right after I graduated high school in 2010, this is the only one that I got around to reading among what I brought with me. My mother made a bet that I would not finish a single book, and in a way she was correct. But we're going to get to later in the list the reason why. But I did finish a good portion of The Poet between the train ride to some of the reading while I was there, and then the train ride back I got a decent amount done. I finished it when I got home, but I got a good portion finished by the time I got back. But this is very... I think that the fact that it's reflective on literature was something that really stuck out to me. And I remember reading Stephen King's introduction, and the fact that "Death is my beat" is the opening sentence. I will be honest and say that aside from basic details, I would need to be refreshed. But from what I've gathered, I really did enjoy this book. Number 8 on my list is The Servants of Twilight by Dean Koontz. I read this toward the end of 2010, and I could recall being really engaged in this piece. It has to do with a crazy old woman who seems like she has witch-like powers, who feels the need to chase and take down the boy as featured on the cover because she thinks that he is satanic, just because his birthday is not the day that she projected it to be. And so he and his mother are on the run. They go after them and do a pretty fine job tracking them down. This cat and mouse chase was incredibly page-turning. I really felt hooked and as I made my way through this book. I would say, as it stands right now as well, this is my favorite Dean Koontz book that I've read thus far. Number 7 on my list is Cat and Mouse by James Patterson, and this is a rematch between Alex Cross and Gary Sinise as they make their way across the East Coast. And one thing that really stuck out was that there were scenes that took place in New Jersey within areas that were relatively familiar, but I don't necessarily feel that Patterson had all the details correct as far as New Jersey locations were concerned. But I think that he had a general idea and did a fine job. But I think that what was most important was that it was a thrilling page-turner. And I can recall making my way through this book around the time, it was in March, because I remember reading it. I think I finished it on my way back from the Jersey Boys concert. Number 6 on my list is Shutter Island by Dennis Lehane. And when I first read this, I was really enthralled, and I thought that this was one of the best twists that I ever saw in a work of this nature. I thought it was a very strong story. I thought it had very strong characters. I reread this in 2019, but I think when I read it the first time, I felt more amazed than I did then. But maybe I'll consider reading it a third time, because the second time I was reading it primarily to prepare for a discussion. Number 5 on my list is the only purchase that I made while I was down in Disney World. And that is The Cheese Plate by Max McCalman and David Gibbons. A lot of people, when they're down in Disney, they'll get Disney attire, Disney memorabilia, pins. Sometimes they'll get refreshments. I went with my grandparents, my sister, my cousin, and my grandparents had a package together, and my grandfather's the kind of person that has everything organized to the last detail. So he kept our interests in mind, of course, but he knew exactly what he wanted to do, where we were going to go, which park we would visit on any given day. And they did treat us for most of the basic things. But I went to the French shop down in Epcot, and this is where I found the cheese plate. And I had to hop right into this, and that's why I put The Poet to the side for a little bit. But I didn't finish this either while I was down there. However, as for the book itself, I will say that this probably had a great influence on the way that I see cheese and the preparation of cheese. This book it talks about McCalman's experience as a maître fromager, which is a cheese master at a restaurant. His philosophies, his strategies, how he's gotten people to try new cheese, and that's what he does. If they don't have a particular cheese, he uses it as an opportunity to help them introduce them to a new cheese. I agree with his method that goats make the best milk, cows make the best butter, and sheep make the best cheese. I think that really shaped that here. I do keep his ideas in mind as far as preparation is concerned. I know he is an advocate for storing cheese strictly at room temperature, and I don't always abide to that. I will often take it out beforehand and let it sit for a reasonable amount of time. But I think that he does I think that as long as you're able to consume it right away, there is merit to storing much of your cheese at room temperature. And then he has a list of his favorites as well. Some of them I was introduced to. But when I was down in Disney World, my reading was The Poet by Michael Connelly and The Cheese Plate by Max McCalman and David Gibbons, with photographs by Susan Salinger. He wrote some more books, and I do want to read them too. Number 4 on my list is a book that I do not own, but I borrowed it from my mom, and it was one that really stuck with me, and that was Look Me in the Eye by John Elder Robison. John Elder Robison was a guitar manufacturer that was known for putting together the explosive the guitars that you could pop open and they shoot out confetti and other substances that you find. These are the guitars that Kiss uses, and he put them together for Kiss. However, his main story is he is an Aspergian, and he grew up as such. His brother, Augustine Burroughs, wrote Running with Scissors, and John Elder Robison has demonstrated that he is a very strong voice and a fine advocate for those that have Asperger's syndrome. He actually visited where I went to school after I had graduated. But it was just a very engaging and solid piece about the experience of one that has Asperger's syndrome. It was a memoir, and it also concentrated on his experiences of being neurodivergent. I remember reading this after graduating high school, but right before I went to Disney World. Number 3 on my list is Hearts in Atlantis by Stephen King. This, to me, is part of what you can call the Stephen King late 90s Renaissance holy trinity of books. And that would include The Green Mile, Bag of Bones, and Hearts in Atlantis. I have all 3 of them in a 3-way tie for my 7th favorite book of all time. I first watched the film adaptation. I thought the film adaptation was great, but this book is better. It's split into 5 novellas that are connected with one another. There is the story that we're most familiar, and that is Low Men in Yellow Coats. Then you have the title story, Hearts in Atlantis. Low Men in Yellow Coats has to do with the major characters growing up. Hearts in Atlantis has many of them at college age. Blind Willie has to do with one of the characters and how things took fruition in his life. Then we have Why We're in Vietnam, and then Heavenly Shades of Night Are Falling. All of them they have that connection to that first story, and then what took fruition throughout their lives, and the overlooming horrors of the Vietnam War that really created the landscape of this piece. The film pretty much only concentrates on what takes place in the first novella. However, the others not just concentrate on that, but they also look at the characters in greater depth and what they became. And I remember reading this, it was the late summer of 2010. I remember being in my grandparents' backyard, reading this poolside, and just being immersed in the story. And it was just, this book was just brilliant. And as much as there are people that they don't rank this as one of their favorites, I do. And I would highly encourage you to check it out. Number 2 on my list for best books that I read in 2010 is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. And this has proven to be one of my favorite books of all time. And I was first introduced to this when I watched the film. I thought the film adaptation was great, and this book, like Hearts in Atlantis, was even better. It helped me develop a greater understanding of the lives of those in Afghanistan. You had somebody who dealt with a very difficult backdrop, especially when the major crises were taking place in their country. They moved to America, but the things that happened during Amir's childhood really make this a story of redemption as well. Being able to redeem yourself from childhood mistakes and bad decisions. But this is just a brilliant work of literature that, to me, garners so much merit because it really succeeds in so many factions. I think The Kite Runner really goes beyond the surface, but the book goes even beyond the surface, and this is a book that everybody should check out. I do need to read his other books, though. A Thousand Splendid Suns and Then the Mountains Echoed. He doesn't write as many books as you would think, but I think that really is a testament to wanting to put out the best. I'm not sure what I can say about the other two, but based off of this, if this was the only book he ever wrote, I think that he could be deemed as a solid author based on the merit of this book alone. And the best book that I read in 2010 is the best book that I read ever. And that's Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. I first started reading this book in late January of 2010. The reason I picked it up is because while I was taking an environmental science class, a few friends and classmates of mine were taking an anatomy class. The teacher was more of an English history person like myself. And so she assigned them to do a PowerPoint presentation on Flowers for Algernon. And so I felt I got this as a Christmas gift from my parents. I think that this would be a great opportunity to read it. And this book is just brilliant. I think that its greatest accomplishment is that it is a pioneer of being able to recognize neurodivergence and those that have mental handicaps and challenges as being people that deserve the necessary and proper attention, and the ability to do that for them will allow them to function in society, because they used to just either brush it off or put them away. And this came out during a time where we were starting to see a transition. Keyes was to teach those that were special education. And I think he put a lot into that story. It started out as a 4-page short story, but became what I felt was a necessary novel, where you have Charlie Gordon telling the story through journal entries. And when he gets to the point where he succeeds and begins to speak, I can really relate to what he's saying and understand what he's saying, because this is a society where those with physical conditions, it's easy for them to garner sympathy, because you can see that there is a problem, but they're doing everything they can to adapt with everybody else. With someone with a mental condition, you cannot see what's going on, and it's more challenging for them to adapt to everybody else. And I think that this book is incredibly important, especially for its period of time. Not just because the story's fascinating, and not just because it's heartbreaking, but because it is insightful and world-changing. I reread Flowers for Algernon in 2017 to prepare for a discussion, and I also wanted to take clearer notes and even strengthen my understanding of the book. I think at some point I would like to reread this, because usually you read your favorite book multiple times, and you want to understand it even more. When you completely understand a book, you want to read it again to completely understand it even more, if you know what I mean. So these are all of the books that made up my top 10 list of the best books that I read in 2010. I want to thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from this channel. And if you like what you see, please subscribe. If you really like what you see, please support us on our Patreon, for the money that we make will allow us to provide you, the viewer, with even more great content. We even have patron-exclusive content for you to check out, and I think that you will really enjoy it. For now, and as always, I encourage you to keep reading.